New York City had no pause button. Honking horns, chatter spilling from cafe patios, subway rumbles beneath worn-out sidewalks. The city lived and breathed chaos, and Jessica knew how to move with it. She was sharp, tall, confident, a black woman who turned heads in a camel coat, curls bouncing with every determined step. A croissant bag peeked out of her tote. Her sneakers, white and worn, slapped against the pavement in rhythm with her playlist. Another Monday. Another meeting. Another day of surviving the city. Until it wasn't. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught a flash of yellow, too low, too small. A little girl. Alone. Jessica's steps faltered. Her breath caught. The world around her blurred, sound melted away. All she could hear was the squeal of tires, too fast, too close. The girl had wandered off the curb. Jessica dropped her bag. 1 heartbeat. 2. She sprinted. People screamed, someone gasped, but Jessica didn't hear them. She threw herself forward, arms out, grabbing the child just as the car shot past them, missing them by what felt like an inch of time and skin. They hit the ground hard. Jessica's elbow scraped against asphalt. The girl cried, a scared, sharp sound, but she was okay. She was alive. Jessica's hands shook. She blinked, trying to steady her breath, when a man burst out of the car, slamming the door so hard it bounced. "What the hell were you doing?" he shouted. Jessica turned, expecting fury. Ready to defend herself. But what hit her wasn't anger. It was confusion, shock, and something else. Recognition. The man rushed to the girl. "Baby, are you okay?" He scooped her up. The child nodded through tears. Jessica rose slowly, blood seeping through her sleeve. "You almost killed her." The man looked at her then. Really looked. Jessica froze. He wasn't just any man. He was the girl's father. And judging by the sleek car, the Rolex, and the way the doorman from the high-rise next to them bowed slightly when he passed, he wasn't just any father, either. Jessica didn't know it yet. But this moment, this chance, reckless act, it was about to change her life. Forever. Jessica sat on the edge of a stone planter, dabbing at the blood on her elbow with a crumpled napkin from her tote bag. The little girl was okay. That was what mattered. But her heart still hadn't slowed down. "Wait," the man said again, stepping closer. She glanced up. His voice wasn't aggressive now, it was off. Like he didn't know whether to be grateful or furious. His suit was sharp, navy, expensive, but his eyes were sharp too, scanning her face like she was a puzzle. "You saved my daughter." Jessica nodded, still shaken. "Yeah. Barely. I didn't see her," he muttered, more to himself. "I was turning, God. She just ran out." He looked at the child in his arms like he'd almost lost his entire world, and then looked at Jessica the same way. "I'm Anthony," he said suddenly, like that was supposed to fix something. "Anthony Monroe." Jessica didn't answer. The name meant nothing to her. But he was still watching her, like he expected her to recognize him. When she didn't, he smiled slightly, amused. Surprised. "Can I buy you a coffee?" he asked. Jessica blinked. "You almost hit a kid." "Your kid." Anthony gave a nod. "I know. Which is exactly why I owe you at least a coffee." The city had returned to its chaos. Horns honked. Music pulsed from passing cars. But for Jessica, everything was on mute. Her hands shook as she crouched on the cold sidewalk, clutching a napkin some stranger had handed her. Blood trickled slowly down her arm, but she barely noticed. Her breath came in stutters, uneven and shallow. The world spun a little, like her body was catching up to what had just happened. The little girl sat beside her, cheeks streaked with tears, still sniffling. Jessica had pulled her back from death, but the impact of what almost was still echoed in every inch of her body. Then a voice cut through the haze. "Wait." She turned her head. There he was. The man from the car. Jessica stood up slowly, brushing bits of gravel off her coat. The man was tall, early 40s maybe, dressed in a suit that screamed money. His tie was loose. His hair, though styled, was now slightly windblown from his rush to get out of the car. He didn't run to his daughter, not at first. He was looking at Jessica. Actually, staring. "You," he began, breathless. "You pulled her out of the way?" Jessica raised an eyebrow. "No, I just happened to fall in front of a moving car and grab a random kid." "Yeah. I pulled her." She didn't mean to sound harsh, but adrenaline was still raging through her system. The man blinked, like her sarcasm jolted him back to life. He turned to the girl and dropped to his knees, scooping her into his arms. "I'm so sorry, Ava," he whispered into her hair. "Daddy didn't see you, baby." "I didn't see you." Jessica folded her arms. "Maybe because you were speeding through a red light." That got his attention again. "I was turning. It wasn't red." Jessica said nothing. Just stared at him, daring him to double down. He didn't. Instead, he looked down, then back up, and extended his hand. "I'm Anthony. Anthony Monroe." Jessica hesitated before shaking it. His grip was warm, firm, but not forceful. "Jessica," she said simply. For a second, he looked like he was waiting for a last name. When none came, he nodded. "You saved my daughter." Jessica looked at Ava, then back at him. "Yeah. I guess I did." Silence. The air between them wasn't hostile, but charged. Like something unspoken was trying to push through. Then, casually. "You don't know who I am, do you?" Jessica frowned. "Should I?" Anthony smiled, but not in a smug way. More like, surprised. "Most people do." Jessica shrugged. "I guess I'm not most people." That made him laugh. Briefly. Almost like a reflex. The tension cracked a little. "I own that building," he said, nodding toward the sleek glass tower behind them. "And the two next to it." Jessica followed his gaze. "Of course he did." "You almost ran over your daughter in front of your own real estate," she said. "That's gotta be a PR nightmare." He smiled again. "Only if it makes it online. But I'm more concerned with thanking the woman who kept my world from falling apart." Jessica was already collecting her tote from the sidewalk, checking that her phone hadn't cracked and her croissant wasn't completely ruined. "I'm good." "Really," she said, trying to move on. "No need to roll out a thank you parade." But Anthony didn't move. "Let me buy you coffee." "At least coffee." Jessica glanced at him, surprised. "You want to get coffee? Now? After all that?" "I do," he said without missing a beat. "You saved my daughter. I want to know who you are." Jessica squinted at him. "You're not gonna try to make me sign an NDA, right?" Anthony grinned. "Only if you're planning to sell the movie rights." A beat of silence. Then Jessica let out a short laugh. Not because it was that funny, but because, maybe she needed to. "All right, real estate guy," she said. "One coffee." "But I picked the spot." Anthony lifted a hand. "Deal." They ended up at a minimalist cafe with gold accents and $7 lattes. Jessica wasn't even sure how she agreed. Maybe it was adrenaline. Maybe it was the fact that Anthony wasn't just polite, he was oddly intrigued. They sat across from each other at a marble table. His daughter, Ava, was now asleep in his lap, curled up in a pink blanket that a cafe worker had brought out of nowhere, like they'd done this before. Anthony sipped espresso like it was routine. Jessica barely touched her drink. "You don't know who I am, do you?" he asked. Jessica narrowed her eyes. "Should I?" Anthony smiled again. "I own half the building we almost died in front of." "Oh. Great. I'm not looking for anything," Jessica said quickly. "I don't want money, I'm not suing, and I'm definitely not." "I'm not offering hush money," Anthony cut in. "You saved my daughter. I just want to know who you are." Jessica paused. She didn't usually open up to strangers, especially not rich ones with watch faces more expensive than her rent. But something about the way he looked at Ava, it softened something. So she told him. About her job. Her neighborhood. Her 45-minute train ride. Her broken heater. Her dream she hadn't touched in years. And for some reason. Anthony listened. The cafe looked like it belonged in a magazine, not on the same street where a child had almost died. Its name was etched in sleek gold across a tinted window, Amber and Steam. Jessica had passed it before, once or twice, maybe, but never dared to go in. Places like this didn't welcome walk-ins in sneakers and stress. But today, she jumped in front of a car. She earned this damn coffee. Anthony held the door for her, still carrying his daughter like she was a diamond. The staff didn't blink. No one asked questions. A host guided them to a booth near the back, leather seats, marble table, low lighting. One waiter brought a baby blanket without being asked. Another came with an espresso menu. Jessica blinked. "Is this normal?" Anthony smirked as he settled Ava beside him. "It's efficient." She glanced around. No tip jars. No music. Just airbrushed silence. Like the kind of place where even your thoughts felt underdressed. Jessica sat, crossed her arms. "I feel like I should whisper." Anthony raised an eyebrow. "Would that make you feel safer?" She shot him a look. "Cute. So, what? You always take strangers to $12 coffee bars after near-death experiences." He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Only the ones who save my child." Jessica wasn't used to being studied, but that's what he was doing. Not in a creepy way, no elevator eyes, no smug grin, just curiosity. Like he couldn't quite place her, and that bothered him. "Okay," she said. "We're here. Talk." Anthony lifted his coffee, some complicated order involving lavender and single origin something. "I want to know about you." "Why?" He didn't flinch. "Because when that car came, you didn't freeze. You moved. You risked yourself for someone you didn't know. That's rare." Jessica snorted. "It's human. It's exceptional," he replied, calm and clear. And just like that, she felt the first crack in her wall. She looked at her own coffee, black, overbrewed, slightly burned. A classic New York mistake. But she didn't complain. She never did. She'd been swallowing her own fire for years. "I'm just someone who works too much, eats standing up, and still doesn't have health insurance," she said finally. "Nothing special." Anthony tilted his head. "You're wrong." Jessica scoffed. "You don't even know me." "Exactly. That's why I'm asking." Ava had drifted off, curled like a kitten with her head against his arm. Jessica watched as Anthony gently adjusted the blanket over her. It was such a normal moment for such an abnormal day. Jessica leaned back, letting herself breathe. "You know, I used to want to be a firefighter." Anthony blinked. "Really?" "Yeah. I liked the idea of showing up in a crisis and actually doing something. No meetings. No managers. Just action." "Then what stopped you?" She laughed. Student loans. Reality. My mom. His eyes narrowed slightly. She didn't approve. She was a nurse. Worked double shifts. Raised me alone. She didn't want me anywhere near danger. Jessica didn't know why she told him that. But it felt right. Maybe because he wasn't reacting with pity. Just presence. Anthony nodded, gently tapping his coffee mug with a finger. My father was a lawyer. Cold. Precise. Obsessed with status. He told me if I ever dated anyone who didn't match the brand, I'd be out of the will. Jessica raised an eyebrow. And here you are. Buying coffee for someone who buys ramen in bulk. He smirked. Maybe I like breaking rules. Time passed differently inside the cafe. Jessica didn't know if it was the heat, the quiet, or the man in front of her, but something slowed. Then, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it. The screen glowed white with a name, Valerie, legal. He didn't answer. Just turned the phone face down. Jessica clocked it. Business? He hesitated. More like, containment. She gave him a dry look. That's cryptic. Anthony exhaled. My life is full of chess pieces, Jessica. People who move when I say move. People who smile when I say smile. You. You just told me to back off in front of my own car. She grinned. You were driving like an asshole. He laughed, a real one this time. Loud, low, unfiltered. And for a moment, the booth didn't feel like a golden cage. It felt like two people breathing in the same pocket of truth. Ava stirred. Jessica glanced at her instinctively, as if the girl were her own niece or goddaughter. Anthony noticed. She likes you, he said, a little too softly. Jessica sipped her coffee. Kids usually do. I'm big on snacks and telling them the truth. Silence settled between them again, but this time it wasn't awkward. It was open. Anthony tapped his knuckles lightly against the table. You don't owe me anything. I just wanted to say thank you. Properly. Jessica leaned forward. You don't owe me anything either. But for what it's worth. I think Ava's lucky to have you. His face changed, just slightly. Like that landed somewhere deeper than it should have. I'm trying, he said. And that was the first thing he said that didn't sound polished. It sounded real. Outside, the wind had picked up. Jessica pulled her coat tighter as they stepped out of the cafe. Anthony still held Ava, who was fully asleep now, her hand curled around his lapel. They stood near the edge of the curb again, the very place where everything had nearly ended. Will I see you again? Anthony asked, casual on the surface, but his eyes said something else. Jessica smiled faintly. Depends. On what? Whether or not you were serious about that, thank you, she said, tilting her head. Because something tells me you're used to getting exactly what you want. Anthony didn't argue. He didn't chase. He just nodded. Jessica turned, ready to walk. But then. Jessica. She looked back. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a small black card with embossed lettering. Just his name. And a phone number. For coffee, he said. Or something that isn't coffee. She took it. Didn't promise anything. But she didn't throw it away either. It started slow. A thank you text. Then another. Then a dinner invite, which Jessica refused 3 times before finally accepting, just to get it over with, she told herself. He picked a rooftop restaurant. Jessica wore a thrifted black dress and the nicest boots she owned. Anthony wore something that looked casual but definitely cost more than her monthly salary. And yet, he didn't act like it. They laughed. Talked. Drank wine. She made him laugh so hard he choked on water. He told her Ava kept asking about the lady who flies like a superhero. By the end of the night, Jessica wasn't just surprised, she was interested. Not in his money. Not in his world. In him. It came that night. Jessica was sitting on the edge of her bed, a heating pad tucked under her elbow, her dinner half-eaten beside her, lukewarm Chinese takeout and a flat ginger ale. The lights were off. Her room glowed only from the soft gold of a desk lamp and the occasional blink from her overworked router. Her phone buzzed. Anthony Monroe. I hope your arm's okay. Also, the coffee was terrible. But you were excellent. Jessica stared at it for a moment, then smirked. She didn't reply. 2 hours later, another buzz. Anthony Monroe. No response. Am I being ghosted by the woman who saved my daughter? Jessica sighed. Rich men and their persistence, she muttered, half smiling. She typed. I only ghost people who almost hit children. So you're half safe. Anthony. I'll take it. Ava asked if the superhero lady is coming over for dinner. I didn't know what to say. Jessica stared at her screen a little longer this time. The texts continued, not every day, but enough to keep her off balance. Sometimes they were funny. Sometimes thoughtful. Occasionally, they were dangerously charming. Anthony. You mentioned ramen once. I almost sent you a year's supply, but my assistant said that would be intense. Jessica. Your assistant's right. That's serial killer behavior. Anthony. Just trying to impress. Or terrify. It's a fine line. And somehow, over the course of a week, what started as sarcasm turned into conversation. Actual, real conversation. They talked about Ava's obsession with dinosaurs. Jessica's favorite podcasts. The city's worst subway stations. The way silence can feel louder than noise when you're alone too long. By day 5, Jessica had stopped pretending she wasn't looking at her phone when it buzzed. It came on a Thursday. Jessica had just stepped out of the subway, hair sticking to her forehead from humidity, tote bag digging into her shoulder. Anthony. Have dinner with me. Simple. Direct. She stood there, blinking at the screen like it was a trick. Jessica. Is that a question or an executive order? Anthony. A question. But I do own the building with your favorite bodega in it. Jessica. You wouldn't dare touch my bodega. Anthony. I might if you say no. She stared at the message, heart beating faster than she expected. Dinner? It was ridiculous. She barely knew him. She didn't belong in his world. And yet. Jessica stood in front of her mirror wearing the only black dress she owned. It hugged her curves well enough but felt like it belonged to someone else, someone richer, taller, quieter. She almost didn't go. 3 times she reached for her phone to cancel. 3 times she stopped. When she finally left, she tossed on a denim jacket over the dress and wore her old boots anyway, her silent rebellion against whatever high society dinner fantasy Anthony might have in mind. The car that picked her up was black, silent, and luxurious. No driver small talk. Just music so soft she couldn't even place the genre. By the time they pulled up to the rooftop restaurant, her palms were damp. The restaurant wasn't on Google Maps. It sat above a building that didn't even have a nameplate. The elevator required a special key. Jessica stepped out into what looked like a dream, low lights, twinkling candles, linen tablecloths, a view of Manhattan's skyline that could make a poet cry. Anthony was already there. No suit tonight, just a soft gray button-up, sleeves rolled to the elbow, and the kind of smile that made her forget where she was. He stood when he saw her. Always a good sign. You clean up well, he said, voice lower than she remembered. You mean I look like I'm pretending to be someone richer? She replied, raising an eyebrow. Anthony laughed. No. You look like you just walked out of a movie I'd pay to watch. Jessica shook her head, but smiled. Smooth. Dinner was effortless. Jessica was ready to feel awkward, out of place, guarded. But Anthony didn't perform. He didn't flex. He didn't talk about money, or success, or brands. Instead, he listened. She told him about her high school debate team. About growing up in Brooklyn and learning how to read subway maps better than textbooks. About the one time she tried yoga and almost punched someone. Anthony laughed until he had to wipe his eyes. Jessica pretended to be annoyed. Secretly, she liked that he wasn't composed. He told her about Ava's fear of thunderstorms. His failed attempt to make pancakes. His frustration with being surrounded by yes people. I didn't grow up with wealth, he said. That came later. The loneliness came with it. Jessica looked at him for a long moment. You seem like you're not used to being told no. He met her eyes. I'm hoping you'll change that. After dinner, they stood at the rooftop railing. The city pulsed beneath them, cars, lights, the faint thump of bass from a club below. Jessica leaned into the breeze. Why me? She asked, not looking at him. Anthony was quiet for a long moment. You scare me, he finally said. That made her turn. In a good way, he added, laughing softly. You don't want anything from me. You don't need me to fix anything. You're not impressed. It's new. Jessica stared at him. Don't fall in love with what you don't understand, she said. I'd rather fall into it than never try. Silence. The wind shifted. Jessica looked out over the city. Her heartbeat had a rhythm now, faster, not from fear, but something dangerously close to hope. The car pulled up again. Jessica hesitated before getting in. Thank you for tonight, she said. It was confusing. Anthony smiled gently. Confusing's not bad. No. But it's dangerous. He took a step closer. Not invading, just offering presence. I won't push, he said. But I'll be here. She got in. Closed the door. Watched him through the tinted glass until he was just a shape in a sea of lights. Her phone buzzed once before she even got home. Anthony. I'll try to behave. No promises, though. Jessica didn't reply. But she smiled. But life wasn't a fairy tale. Jessica's coworker warned her, guys like that don't date girls like us. They date their assistants and their yacht buddies. Her landlord suddenly fixed her heater without asking. A mysterious deposit showed up in her Venmo, anonymous. And Anthony? He was perfect. Too perfect. Every date, every text, every smile, it felt like something was being held back. One night, over drinks, Jessica finally asked. Why me? Anthony didn't answer at first. Then he said quietly, because you didn't flinch when it mattered. And I've never had that. Jessica's coworker, Danny, leaned over the cubicle wall with a smirk. Okay. Spill. Jessica blinked up from her screen. Spill what? Danny raised an eyebrow. You've been smiling at your phone for 3 days straight. You either got a new skincare routine or a man with real cheekbones. Jessica chuckled. You're dramatic. Girl, I saw that car pick you up last night. That thing costs more than this entire office. And you were wearing lipstick. Spill. Jessica hesitated, then gave in with a tiny smile. He's not what I expected. Rich? Obviously. But also, smart. Present. Like, actually listens. Danny leaned in. Be careful. Rich men know how to perform empathy better than they perform loyalty. Jessica paused. She wanted to defend him. But the words didn't come as quickly as before. Noted, she said instead. 2 days later, a package arrived at her apartment. No card. No note. Just a pale blue box tied with a black ribbon. Inside, a cashmere coat. Her size. Her color. Her exact taste, somehow. Jessica stared at it like it might explode. She texted Anthony. "This yours?" He replied in seconds. "You mentioned your coat zipper was busted. I figured, something warmer." She held the phone tighter than she meant to. She typed. "I didn't ask for this." Then deleted it. Typed again. "Thank you. It's beautiful." She sat on her bed for a long time, the coat lying across her lap like a sleeping animal. Warm. Soft. Heavy. Too heavy. They went to a brunch. Not just any brunch, the kind with valet parking, champagne before noon, and plates that looked like abstract art. Jessica walked in wearing the coat. People looked. Not stared, looked. Judged. They saw her. Then saw him. And decided she was a temporary accessory. Anthony didn't notice. Or pretended not to. He introduced her. "This is Jessica. Not my girlfriend. Not the woman who saved my daughter. Just Jessica." At one point, a woman leaned in, too close, too scented. "Oh, are you in Anthony's foundation team?" she asked sweetly. "You have that vibe. Very public-facing." Jessica smiled with all teeth. "Nope. I'm the reason his daughter's still alive." The woman blinked. Then laughed nervously. Anthony heard it. Later, in the car, he said, "You don't have to explain yourself to people like that." Jessica looked out the window. "No. But maybe you should." He invited her to his place. Not in a stay-over way. Just, "Come see where I live," like it was no big deal. The elevator had a private key. The hallway smelled like fresh orchids. His apartment was 3 stories high, with windows so big they felt like sky. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. Jessica wandered through it like a museum. A glass staircase. An indoor herb garden. Books arranged by color. Even the air smelled expensive. Then she noticed it, no photos. Not one. Not of Ava. Not of family. Not even a dog. "Do you even live here?" she asked lightly. Anthony shrugged. "I travel a lot." Jessica ran her fingers along a marble counter. "Feels more like a showroom than a home." He stood behind her in silence. "You could fix that," he said softly. "You bring the human part." Jessica started noticing things. Subtle things. He always picked the places. He always paid. He never asked her real questions anymore, just gave compliments and stories. When she brought up her job, he changed the subject. Once, she mentioned her landlord raising rent. He offered to pay it. Immediately. She stared at him. "That's not the point," she said. "I know," he replied. "But the point is you don't have to suffer." "But I do," she said. "Because that's my life. It's real." He didn't answer. It came to her while brushing her teeth one night. What if she'd never saved Ava? Would Anthony have even noticed her? Would he have looked at her at all? And why did that thought hurt more than it should? Jessica was walking back from work, city lights blurring in puddles, when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She picked up. Jessica Matthews. Her full name. Sharp. Cold. Yes. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Monroe. There's a small misunderstanding regarding press coverage from last week's brunch event. Mr. Monroe wanted to ensure you hadn't shared anything personal with media contacts. Jessica stopped walking. What the hell are you talking about? The voice hesitated. Of course. Just routine. Thank you for your time. Click. Jessica stood still, heart pounding. He had someone check on her. Behind her back. That night, she didn't text. Didn't answer his. He showed up the next day. No appointment. Just a knock on her door, standing there with takeout and that damn smile. She opened the door halfway. Jessica. Did you send someone to vet me? He blinked. What? Don't lie. He paused. Then, quietly, I just wanted to make sure nothing could hurt Ava. Jessica stared at him. I was already protecting Ava, she said. Before you even got out of your car. Silence stretched. Then Anthony spoke, voice low. I've lived in a world where people only show up when there's a benefit. You were different. I panicked. Jessica didn't know what to say. She closed the door softly. Not a slam. But final enough. Anthony invited her to a gala. It wasn't just fancy. It was another universe. Jessica wore a dress from a boutique Anthony's assistant recommended. She felt like a stranger in her own body, but he made it look easy. With her on his arm, the room turned. Some people looked at her with envy. Some with confusion. One woman even asked, "Oh, are you the new PR hire?" Jessica smiled. No. Just the girl who saved his kid. Later that night, on a balcony that smelled like champagne and cold air, Anthony turned to her. Move in with me. Jessica blinked. Not because I want to change you, he added. But because I want more mornings with you in them. Jessica hadn't heard from Anthony in 2 days. Not since she called him out. Not since she closed that door. And then, as if summoned by doubt itself, a sleek envelope slid under her apartment door. Handwritten. Her name in perfect ink. Inside, a single card. Saturday, 8 p.m. Come see how I live, with all the curtains pulled back. No address. Just a black and gold business card clipped to the back. Jessica stared at it for a long time. She didn't know what she was walking into. But her curiosity. Louder than her caution. The car arrived precisely at 7:30. Same driver. Same silence. Jessica wore black again, different dress, same discomfort. She added hoop earrings this time, a tiny act of defiance. She needed to feel herself grounded. They pulled up not to a building, but a compound. Hidden between 2 generic-looking office towers, behind a private gate that shimmered like glass in the dusk. A valet opened her door. Miss Jessica, welcome. She stepped out. Cool air kissed her arms. Somewhere, invisible speakers played jazz. A wall of ivy covered one side of the entrance, swaying gently like the place was breathing. She was led through a garden. Through 2 sets of glass doors. Up a spiral staircase lit from within. And then she saw him. Anthony stood in a room unlike anything she'd seen before. No chandeliers. No crystal. Just soft wood, warm lights, books, plants, art that didn't scream expensive, but whispered, collected. A fire crackled quietly in a hearth framed by stone and steel. He wore no tie. Just a dark shirt and bare feet. Ava's with her aunt tonight, he said. I wanted you to see the version of this life that doesn't pose for Forbes. Jessica raised an eyebrow. Is this the real you? He smiled. Closer than usual. He poured them both wine, real wine, earthy and red, not the kind meant to impress. They sat in chairs too comfortable for polite conversation. No pretense. Just air. They didn't talk for 10 minutes. Then, slowly, he began. My first apartment in New York was above a Chinese bakery in Queens. Roaches in the walls. No hot water. I ate instant noodles and cold dumplings for a year straight. Jessica blinked. You? Seriously? Anthony nodded. I lied my way into finance. I built everything by watching what people wanted and giving it to them before they asked. She tilted her head. And what do you want? He looked at her for a long moment. I want something I don't have to manage. Jessica stared back. I'm not something you own, Anthony. I know, he said. That's why I'm asking. He stood, walked to the kitchen, returned with a small box. Not a ring. Not even a velvet case. Inside, a silver key. To his home. To his life. Jessica didn't reach for it. Before you say anything, he said softly, I'm not trying to buy you. I'm asking you to choose this. Not because you need to. But because I do. She stayed quiet. You said once you were tired of surviving, Anthony added. I want you to know what it feels like to live. Jessica looked at the key. Then at him. I'm not a rescue project. I know. I'm not your balance. I know. Then why me? He paused. Because you're the first thing in years that's made me feel. Jessica took the key. Held it. Studied the weight of it. It was heavier than it looked. It glinted in the light like a promise and a threat. I need to think, she said at last. Anthony nodded. Good. That surprised her. No rush, she asked. None, he said. The door'll open when you want it to. She didn't sleep that night. She walked home. Refused the car. Needed the noise, the chill, the subway's screeching metal. She walked past her bodega. Past her childhood school. Past a mural she'd helped paint when she was 15. Everything felt smaller now. And maybe that was the problem. Or maybe it was the point. When she finally got home, she placed the key on her nightstand and stared at it. She didn't know what she was more afraid of, using it. Or not. She said yes. Not because of the money. Or the car that picked her up the next day. Or the closet the size of her old studio. She said yes because of Ava, who hugged her legs like she belonged. Because of the way Anthony looked at her when she talked. Because of the way, for the first time in years, she felt like her life wasn't just about surviving. She felt seen. Life changed, fast. Mornings with fresh coffee made by someone else. Nights in silk sheets. Days working remotely because you shouldn't waste time in traffic. Jessica kept waiting for it to feel fake. But it didn't. Until one morning, Anthony looked at her over breakfast and said, You don't have to go back to that job, you know. Jessica froze. It was a test. A trap. Or maybe, just a question. She sipped her coffee. I will. But I'll choose when. Anthony smiled. That's what I love about you. They told friends it started with a brunch. But Jessica remembered the truth. It started with a jump. A risk. A scream. A moment when she didn't think, just moved. She didn't save that girl for a reward. But in doing so, she found her own. Not a man. Not a mansion. But a life she chose. A love that saw her. And a future that was hers to shape. And sometimes, that's how everything changes. Not with a plan. But with a leap.